Hey there, adventurers! Welcome back to another wild journey. Today, we're diving into a story of Wes, a guy with a past he'd rather forget, finds himself in the midst of a thrilling chase through Bangkok's bustling streets and Myanmar's dense jungles. In a village, there are these two dudes, one with long hair and the other with short hair. They're being chased by some tough-looking gang with weapons, and things get crazy. The guy with short hair, unfortunately, gets hit by an arrow and meets a sad end. These bad guys are on a hunt in the middle of a forest, and here's the weird part: no villagers are around. It's like they all vanished. After a good run, the long-haired guy finally figures out how to dodge those attacks. Now rewind about 6 months earlier, our main guy meets this big-shot MMA fighter named Wes Baylor. Wes is like the top dog in America, but he's got a fight coming up with his own buddy, Johnny. Round 1, Wes locks Johnny up good, but in round 2, Johnny gets back on his feet and gives Wes a beating that's anything but pleasant. The coach suggests Wes pull a sneaky move and make Johnny pass out, wrapping up the match right then and there. Wes, being the good sport, follows the coach's advice and makes it happen. So Wes, he pulls off this killer kick in a fight and scores a victory. But things take a dark turn. Johnny, his best buddy, never wakes up after that fight. Wes is hit hard by guilt. They've been through so much together, and now all he's got are memories. Fast forward 6 months after Johnny's passing. Wes decides he's hanging up his fighting gloves, but he's still haunted by his friend's death, even after all that time. So he tries taking a sedative pill to calm his mind. But when the money's tight, he dives back into street fights. So Wes gets awesome opportunity. He gets invited to fight in the swanky hotel. The Sultans are watching and have a prize ready for the champ. And Wes nails it with his killer uppercut, taking down his opponent. Just after that, out of the blue, this dude shows up. He introduces himself as Jonah, the fight promoter, and his sidekick, Madden, is right there by his side. Jonah throws Wes a curveball, an invite to brawl in Myanmar, and he promises Wes a jackpot that could last a lifetime. After handing his business card to Wes, Jonah suggests, "Feel free to give me a call if you're interested." The next day, Wes couldn't help but remember what Johnny had said just before they went head-to-head in a big competition. Johnny had a wild dream of owning a house right by the beach, and he was planning to fund it with the cash he'd made from MMA fights. But luck wasn't on his side, and Wes gonna be the one buying that beachy dream house. After giving it some thought, Wes figured, why not turn Johnny's dream into reality? He headed over to meet up with Jonah, the big shot who had the power to make it all happen. With a burst of energy, Wes strolled into Jonah's office. He was totally ready and declared, "Absolutely, I'm in. But I've got a tiny request. I'd like to get paid up front before the whole fight spectacle kicks off." Jonah took it in stride, showing his agreement. Fast forward, Wes is on his way to Myanmar, ready to face his opponents. And Jonah had some connections, and he introduced Wes to this military dude who was totally down with the whole thing. They were all set to make this happen. Jonah also introduced the gang of challengers, who had some pretty interesting nicknames. There was Espardo, the bullfighter from Spain, the same dude who takes on actual bulls. Then we had Jacob and his kid Tobias, huge fans of Wes. And don't forget about Sophia. She was all about hunting, like as a hobby. And the last, Landon, the mastermind behind shooting games, was all set to give Wes a run for his money. So after the introduction, Wes found himself scratching his head, totally puzzled by what was going on. He gave Jonah a puzzled look and threw out, "Dude, where's the arena at? And who am I gonna face?" Jonah, sporting a mischievous grin, spilled the details. He was like, "Hold up, the arena is pretty much everywhere around here, and your opponents, just a bunch of random folks who crossed paths with you." Before the whole show started, Jonah pulled out the big bucks, a bunch of shiny rubies worth a whopping $1 million. And then he dished out the game plan to Wes. They handed him just a water bottle to survive, while the hunters got to pick whatever weapon they fancied. If Wes got nabbed or took a hit, he was out of the game. But if he managed to slip past the boundary line, he'd be the champ of champs. Jonah went the extra mile and showed Wes firsthand. Out of the blue, 2 prisoners appeared, and the general's crew marked them as targets. Wes was left in awe as this guy Madden skillfully took down one of the convicts using an arrow. Wes didn't think twice. He bolted from that scene. He wasn't about to get tangled up in this shady business. But Jonah's crew and the big boss himself were right there, armed and ready to roll. Jonah gave Wes a quick heads up. You've got just 2 minutes to haul it and find a hiding spot. With no other choice in sight, Wes reluctantly jumped into this life or death game. And he decided to bolt into the woods, crossing his fingers to vanish and become practically impossible to catch. Now on the flip side, Jonah got in the mix. He's got another player in this hunting game, Maduka, a hunter who's all in on these shenanigans. These guys are no strangers to this gig. Before the hunt even kicked off, Jonah had a rule: no cell phones, no cameras. He wanted his crew to be fully present and not glued to their screens. With that sorted, they marched into the forest. As everyone's attention was fixed on a single direction, Maduka went for a different vibe, thinking, nah, I'm gonna go the scenic route instead. Meanwhile, Wes was chilling by the river when he spotted a dead body just floating by. The game had been pulled off quite a few times, and just when Wes was lounging, out of nowhere, Maduka decided to make his move. It was a sneak attack, but Wes's quick reflexes dodged it to save the day. Thinking on his feet, Wes lured Maduka closer. And the moment Maduka took the bait, Wes pounced from below and delivered a knockout punch. As the sun was setting, Jonah's crew was scratching their heads. Wes was still nowhere to be found. And Landon was up to some sneaky business. He had a camera stashed away in his bag, recording all the juicy conversations between the hunters. So, Wes found himself in a tight spot when Madden sniffed out his hiding spot. Quick thinker, Wes dove right into the river, ducking the hunters' attacks. But he didn't stop there. He slipped away to another river just behind the hill. And over there, Wes bumped into a lady named Thay, who was hanging out with a bunch of elephants. Thay noticed something shiny on the ground. It was a watch that had dropped, and that watch was a real treasure, a gift from Wes's pal Johnny. At first, Wes had his doubts, thinking maybe Thay was Jonah's sidekick, or something, but turns out, Thay's one of the good ones. Thay shared that she was on a mission to find her brother, Win, who had also been caught up in this crazy game. And Thay felt for Wes, and she was like, you know what? I got your back. She decided to help Wes out, leading him toward the border of the forest. While cruising along, Thay started sharing some scoop with Wes. She spilled that her brother Win was a pro at fighting and even dealt with some funky magic powder. But one day, he just vanished into thin air. Thay had a gut feeling that her big bro would end up in the crosshairs of this game. And Thay wasn't alone in this. Lots of folks from these parts got caught up in this game before. On the flip side, Jonah played the hero. Seeing the hunters dragging their feet, he tossed some wheels their way. But Jonah pulled out a drone, he set it on Wes's tail, and he spotted Thay too. Jonah wasn't about to let her off the hook either. He added her to the ever-growing list of targets. Meanwhile, Wes had a word with Thay, giving her the lowdown. Look, no need to follow me anymore. I've got the route to the border covered. Out of the blue, 3 hunters zoomed in on motorbikes, ready to stir up some trouble. Wes wasn't about to let them have their way. He jumped right in, showing off his moves, and took down 2 of those hunters in a flash. He then signaled Thay to hunker down and stay hidden. Swift thinker that he is, Wes hopped onto one of the bikes and lured a 3rd hunter away. That hunter was none other than Sophia. Things got intense when she was hot on Wes's tail, almost nabbing him. But Wes spotted a button on the bike that unleashed a spider web shot out. Wes aimed and fired at Sophia. She got tangled up in the web and tumbled off the bike. She bounced back fast, though, unleashing a volley of arrows at Wes. Wes was no slouch. He danced around, dodging Sophia's arrows. But she wasn't done. Sophia came at him again, showcasing some serious martial arts move. Wes wasn't one to back down, especially with his MMA background. He pulled out all the stops, unleashing a killer kick that sent Sophia flying a good 5 meters. With that done, Wes wasted no time. He darted off in search of Thay, ready to keep this wild adventure rolling. So, Jacob and Tobias were on the lookout for Thay, thinking they could easily find her. Little did they know, that was pulling off some ninja moves, she sneaked right behind them without them even noticing. And then a full-blown fistfight broke out. That was holding her own, but Jacob was a bit too much for her to handle. Things got real scary when Jacob started acting all nasty, like he was about to do something awful to Tha. And Tobias, Jacob's partner, decided not to step in, not a fan of getting all violent. But Wes entered the scene swooping in. He laid the smackdown on Tobias, sending him tumbling to the ground. Wes then came to Tha's rescue. And Tha had already taken care of Jacob. She went all warrior on him, and he didn't make it. As if things weren't already heated, Jonah, the big boss himself, was fuming. Jacob's demise set him off, and he took out his anger on Tobias, slapping him silly for being such a letdown during the hunt. But Jonah didn't stop there. He pushed Tobias into seeking revenge for his dad's death. Meanwhile, Tha was seriously thrown by everything that went down. She had a major guilt trip about taking out Jacob. But Wes was there to bring her back to Earth, reassuring her that none of this was on her. And then Tha took Wes to a little hut to tend to his shoulder wound. As if that wasn't enough, she had this idea to pray in front of a horse statue, hoping to keep them alive in this crazy game. But Jonah was like a dog with a bone. He kept tracking Wes and Tha down. The ruby Wes was carrying, Jonah had planted a tracking device in there all along, which explained how he was always on their tail. Just when things couldn't get any crazier, Wes and Tha found themselves trapped in a minefield. But Wes pulled a fast one. He led Jonah's gang right into the minefield. First, they weren't falling for it, but out of nowhere, Tobias charged Wes all by himself. He was trying to prove a point, show his bravery or whatever, but it didn't go well for him. Wes took him down. After sorting that out, Wes told Tha once again to split, but she was having none of it. She was all about helping him reach the border. Tha came up with a plan. Wes should hide in a cave. And in the cave, they stumbled upon a dude with long hair, all messed up and groaning in pain. This was the same guy from the beginning of the story, Win, Tha's long-lost brother. When night came, the trio huddled up in the cave for some shoe tie. But before they dozed off, Tha threw Wes a question out of the blue. Tha threw out a question, wondering, "Hey, why is that watch so important to you?" Wes spilled the beans, admitting he wanted to keep it as a reminder of Johnny, even if not all the memories were sunshine and rainbows. Tha was on a mission to chill Wes out, reassuring him that tomorrow was a new day, and she was gonna make sure he got to the border. But then, when it seemed like everyone should be dozing off, Wes had a nightmare. He was back to wrestling with his guilt over Johnny's death. Tha was all about playing the dream therapist, telling Wes that Johnny's passing was an accident and he shouldn't carry the blame. Meanwhile, Jonah and his hunter posse were getting some shut-eye too. Before they conked out, Jonah decided to spill the beans about how he cooked up this whole game. Back in the day, he was a CIA agent, but things got messy, and he ended up on the organization's naughty list. So he ran into this general who had a whole bunch of powers. Instead of letting them kick the bucket for no reason, Jonah cooked up the idea to turn them into moving targets. And just like that, the game was born. Over time, it grew and rich folks hopped on the bandwagon, investing left and right. The next morning, Wes popped his eyes open and Tha was nowhere to be found. And Ruby had pulled a disappearing act too. Turns out Tha and Win had fallen into Jonah's clutches. Those two were subjected to some nasty torture right there on the railroad tracks. Also, they'd squeal about Wes's hideout. Wes spotted Landon off in his own world. Quick as lightning, Wes jumped into action, launching a surprise attack. He had Landon at gunpoint, making it crystal clear that he needed directions to Jonah. When they hit those railroad tracks, Wes played his trump card. He threatened to give Landon a one-way ticket to the afterlife if Jonah didn't cut Tha and Win loose. Jonah didn't have much of a choice. He caved and let the siblings go. Wes didn't waste a moment, barking at them to haul it and run like the wind. Wes had his own plans. He was ready to throw down and buy time for Tha and Win by taking on Jonah's crew. As they were making their way, Sophia popped up, all curious about where Wes had vanished to. And out of nowhere, Tha gave Win a shove that sent him tumbling down. She had some unfinished business with Sophia and was itching to throw down with her. No beating around the bush, these two ladies started duking it out with nothing but their fists. It was a tough battle, but they held her ground and eventually put Sophia down for the count. Meanwhile, Wes had his own escape plan. He gave Jonna the slit by diving headfirst into the river. When he hit the riverbank, there were Tha and Win waiting, and Wes spotted Landon's camera, the one he'd swiped earlier. On it was some evidence, a video showcasing Jonna's crimes, ready to go viral. With the camera in hand, Wes had a burning question for Tha and Win. Why'd they snatch his ruby, especially when he put his trust in them? Tha handed back the ruby, full of apologies. She was no turncoat, no siree. Tha had a plan to sell that ruby, use the cash to deal with the big boss, the general, and keep the people safe from his meddling. Wes was all about forgiveness, with one condition: they had to get him to the border safe and sound. In a flash, Madden stumbled upon Landon's camera and gave Jonna the heads up. That's when all heck broke loose. Jonna's fury shot through the roof, especially cause Wes had swiped the memory card that could send their dirty laundry viral. If that video hit the internet, everyone in on the game would be staring at a one-way ticket to the slammer, and Jonna was beyond ticked off. He took out his frustration on Landon, slicing and dicing him until lights out. So the hunter count dropped to just one, the Spanish matador, Esparto. But Esparto put 2 and 2 together. He sniffed out that Jonna had been cheating, using a tracking device. With a sword in hand, he pointed it right at Jonna. Turns out, our matador buddy had some principles. He called out Jonna for his sneaky tactics, saying it was dishonorable to hunt with a tracking device. But Esparto had to suck it up and work alongside Jonna to nab Wes. Wes finally got wise to the fact that his ruby was carrying a sneaky tracer. He hatched a plan. He was gonna outfox Jonna's gang by splitting up. And not just that, he had some wicked traps up his sleeve to slow them down. First, he cracked open a barrel of gasoline, and then swiped Jonna's gun and speedboat. When Jonna's eyes locked onto Wes, he heading straight for that border. At the same time, Esparto was on a mission of his own. He tracked down Tha and Win, right by the riverside. With a glint in his eye, he threw down the challenge to Win, a one-on-one duel. And Win jumped in, no questions asked. But Esparto had some serious moves. Just when things were looking grim, Tha swooped in, teaming up with her brother. Working together, they took Esparto down for the count. On the flip side, Wes trying to get across the border, but Jonna who just can't stop causing trouble. So Wes has no choice but to turn tail and run to dodge those pesky shots Jonna keeps firing. And Wes scrambles up to higher ground and totally takes down a whole bunch of Jonna's goons who were in his way. After that crazy showdown, Wes doesn't waste a second. He's all pumped up about climbing that border bridge, thinking nobody can put a stop to him. But Jonna happens to be there as well, just chilling and taking it easy. And Jonna's not just causing chaos with Wes, he's going all out and causing trouble for innocent folks too. Jonna's hoping Wes will wave the white flag because of these poor civilians, but things take a wild turn when Jonna goes all, "I'm gonna shoot a kid." That's when Wes has to throw in the towel. Wes was holding onto the memory card that belongs to Landon, and he's not giving it up, because he trusted this object to Tha and Win. So, Jonna's not too thrilled with Wes for not coughing up the card, and he's not playing nice either. Him and his buddy Madden start roughing Wes up. Jonna and Madden decide to throw a party, a 5-on-1 fight party. They call in the big guns, the top fighters in Myanmar. They're all ganging up on Wes, thinking they've got him cornered. But Wes is secretly loving it. He's all about having a worthy opponent. In no time, Wes totally took down all those fighters. And now it's Madden's turn to give it a shot. But just a few seconds into the showdown, Madden's already on the ground thanks to one of Wes' killer kicks. Wes doesn't stop there. He goes on to give Jonna a serious beatdown. And Wes got a revenge plan. Wes wants to turn the tables and make Jonna the target for a change, but the general swoops in with his troops. But Thet is also there, and she dashes over to the general and does some sneaky business, handing over some of Wes's precious rubies. And the general gives the order, and his troops are all set to take Jonna down, right then and there. After all the wrapped up, the hands back some sparkly rubies to Wes, and then there's Wes thinking, hey, why not get a house by the beach, you? It's seriously like a dream coming true. And Johnny's wife, Kay. She's the one who ends up with that beachy house, and she takes a moment to send out letter. She's giving Wes a huge thanks and letting him know, hey, no need to stress about Johnny's bad luck. You're innocent, dude. At the end of the movie, Wes marries Tha, and they establish a martial arts school right next to a river. So, here's the deal. The story's got a lesson to drop on us. Sometimes, that feeling of guilt and wishing you did stuff differently can stick with you. But the choices we make when things get tough, those are like a sneak peek into who we really are.